Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. We are triple streaming again. Today, I want to talk about. The hypothetical scenario between a war breaking out between NATO and Russia. I want to analyze this, guys, and kind of give like what I think and how I think this is going to pan out. Now, obviously, I can only speculate on how things are going to pan out. I don't know how they are actually going to pan out. What I will do is I will talk about this. Very difficult. It's very difficult to judge politics, guys. Very difficult to judge politics. So what I'm going to do in this live stream, guys, I'm gonna set out states and Russia would go. Now, I have talked about this a few times, but I've never really monologued about this and talked about it in depth. So what we'll do is, guys, we'll start talking, and then I'll stop at various points, and we'll just have a little bit of a chat about what would happen and how things would, how things would move forward. So before we get started, guys, I just want everybody to think, whoever you are, wherever you are in the United Kingdom or wherever you are in the world, just think, could Europe's NATO, as in, I think there's 31 countries of NATO without the United States, take on, force for force Russia? Now, I want you to hold that thought, guys. Just have a little think about that, and I will come back onto that in a little bit. So, before we get on, guys, let's paint the. In fact, actually, guys, before we get on with this, can you guys do me a real big favor? Like, comment, subscribe, bell notification. We are triple streaming, guys. We're triple streaming, so we are on TikTok, we're on YouTube, and we are on X. We're doing it simultaneously, guys. We are doing that simultaneously. Please show your support on all those platforms, guys. I will be doing the first part of this stream on TikTok, YouTube, and X. I will then close that down, and I will just go over to X and YouTube, and I will be giving a little bit more of a gruesome analysis of how these things, I believe, will close down. But while we're on TikTok, guys, I'm going to try and keep it as user-friendly as I can. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for hitting that screen, guys. Thank you for hitting that screen. So without further ado, guys, let's paint the picture. This month, next month, the beginning of next year, it doesn't really matter when, but NATO minus the United States. So still a powerhouse, guys, still massive powerhouse. 31 countries, some estimate, low estimates of 1.5 million troops, high estimates of 2 million troops. Obviously, you can rack more up, but we're just going with those numbers for now. Some of the world's finest, most advanced, technological advanced weaponry. Germany's Leopard 2 tank, France's Rafale, the UK's F-35 fighter jet. But here's the kicker, guys. The United States provides critical piece of the puzzle. Satellite, intelligence, airlift. Like, we don't have any, like, realistically, guys, you know what I mean by airlift? Like Chinook helicopters, what are they called? Globemaster C-17s. We don't have as, like, NATO, European NATO. We don't really have that airlift capability. And of course, the United States have a massive nuclear arsenal, but of course, so do the United Kingdom and so do France. Now, so Europe has got massive gaps. On the other side, if we want to look at Russia's, do a side-by-side comparison with Russia, Russia have about 1.3 million troops. That is a lot of troops, guys. That is a lot of troops. 1.3 million troops, but these are battle-hardened troops. These are troops that have been doing the job. These are troops that are battle-hardened in Ukraine. They know how to use their equipment. They know how to fight. They know how to fight Western equipment. They know how to defeat it. So a little fly in here or something. So they know how to defeat Western equipment. They're masters of continuing to drive forwards, of grinding that war down, of attritional warfare. Think relentless artillery barrages, guys, now, and the willingness. Now, this is the thing that Western nations just do not do, guys. Western nations will not accept the heavy losses that the Russians will accept. Plus, the Russians have got a huge nuclear arsenal, guys. You know, the Russian nuclear arsenal is absolutely huge. So my first question for you guys tonight, then, ladies and gentlemen, is what do we think's more important in a conflict? Like, if a war breaks out, what's more important, numbers and technology, or battle experience? Like, where do we stand on that, guys? What do you think's more important, numbers and, you know, numbers and technology? I guess you can class that down as technology, because I think the numbers are pretty much. You know what, guys? Let me ask you a different question. That was a bit of a bone question. Let me ask you another question. What's more important, technology or experience? I think that's a better question. Yeah. So what is better, guys? You've got, on one hand, you've got NATO, which is a vastly inexperienced military. And what I mean by that is inexperienced in fighting a conflict of this scale. You know, and I always said this, guys, this is going to be a conflict of an industrial scale. So what's more important, having the greatest technology or having the experienced troops? I guess it depends on what, you know, I guess it depends on, there's varying degrees of this. Obviously, if you're talking about a technology readiness level of the Roman army, you know, and then you're looking at the technology readiness level of, I don't know, the French military. Of course, the French military are going to win every time. But then if you're talking about the experience of people fighting the Second World War and people not fighting the Second World War, then people fighting the Second World War are going to win. So, you know, I guess it's an open question and only time's going to tell, but there are varying degrees of that answer, guys. So let's think about the military matchup then. Listen, guys, I'll jump on the comments now, actually. I'll jump on the comments and then we'll talk about, like, the military matchup. And we'll really get into, like, how much each country spends and what they spend on and budgets and what kind of equipment they've got. Right, there's so many questions, guys. So many questions jumping up tonight. Joanne is saying experience. Just look at Ukraine. Half of them couldn't use the equipment. Dave Bryce saying depends on the operation. Yeah, exactly. It's going to depend on a lot of things, guys. But overall, I genuinely don't know who takes this. I don't know who takes that. Is it better to have, in this scenario where you would see the Russian military and they have a really experienced military fighting that particular conflict, and then NATO are going to come in there with no experience but all their technology? I don't know who takes it, guys. I don't know who takes it. Thing is, with technology, they run out of batteries, they stop working, they're not tested, you know, and then the bad guys, whoever that may be, they're always going to try and find out new tactics, new methods of operating to defeat that technology. Thomas Vale is saying United States probably state logistical, but won't put boots on European ground. Okay. I'm totally taking the United States out of this scenario, guys. I'm totally taking the United States out of this scenario. Logistically, G2? Is it G? It's G2 intelligence. I think G2 is intelligence. You know, so what I'm talking about now, guys, is purely NATO minus the United States. Would they have the capacity to take on Russia in a face-off in Eastern Europe? Just a quick one, guys. Slightly off topic, but from now over on YouTube, we just put an interesting comment. Nostradamus is said to have predicted a catastrophic asteroid impact or near miss with Earth in 2025. While the exact interpretation of his verses are debated, some interpretations suggest a fireball. So I think what we're talking about there is, could that be a nuclear fireball? Barry Payne is saying, how many immigrants in the United Kingdom will fight? You think it's bad now? Just wait till the boys leave for war and all that's left is the immigrants. Yeah, guys, we've talked about this lots of times. Barry, I've spoke about this like maybe a year ago. We were speaking about this. I will come back. I will come back to that later on, though, guys. Okay. I don't want to turn every one of my live streams into the United Kingdom. So, guys, listen, we will continue. We will continue with this. We will continue. So, military matchup then. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty, guys. Okay. If this war, and I don't know, what do we think? Do we think it's going to kick off? I personally do think it's going to kick off at some point very soon. If this war kicks off, what do both sides bring to the table, guys? Okay, now I'm trying to be as objective and one-dimensional here as possible. I understand what I'm going to talk about now has intricate layers of complexity. Is that a word? I don't know. It should be a word, complexity. So I'm just going to try and keep this as simple as possible, guys. And if there's any granular questions out there, if anybody wants to throw any granular questions out there, I'll try to answer them as best I can. So if this war kicks off, what do both sides bring to the table? You know, what do the NATO side bring? Obviously, the European NATO, NATO light, and what do the Russian side bring to the table? So there's something in here. So thank you for the hearts. Thank you for the hearts. So the European NATO technology is massively, you know, they have a massive technological advance. Think precision guided missiles, cyber defenses, navies, leads, a combined defense budget. Now, guys, listen, I tried to I'm not sure that this is right, but it's the number I'm going to go with. I had to, it's very difficult to work out, guys. But I'm going to say that the combined defense budget of NATO minus the United States is around 500 billion a year. I think that's, I'm going to go with 500 billion, guys, which is absolutely dwarfing Russia's 120 billion a year. Now, but here's the problem, guys. Here's the problem. NATO, European NATO, I guess, have been leaning on Uncle Sam, on the good old US of A, for logistics, air power, intelligence. Now, for this scenario, guys, I'm going to say that we don't have the United States for logistics. We don't have the United States for intelligence. And we don't have the United States for their air power. And guys, look, when we talk about US air power, people kind of don't understand how how phenomenal the United States air power is. And people think that, oh, Britain has got the best pilots. Trust me, guys, we don't. Maybe in the Second World War, yes, not now. So when you consider the United States Air Force is the world's biggest air force by maybe a factor of 10, and the second biggest air force in the world, so you've got the United States Air Force, they are the world's biggest air force by maybe a factor of 10. And then the second biggest air force is the United States Navy. You can kind of see the air power that the United States brings to bear, but we don't have that, guys. We don't have that. What we are talking about now is purely a European NATO versus a Russia. So without those assets, guys, without that air power, without that logistics, without that intelligence, without that force projection that the United States is able to provide, there are seriously massive gaps, guys. Okay. For example, if somewhere in NATO, if we had to move troops to the Baltics real quick, things could get messy, guys. Things could get messy because NATO, without the United States, we don't have that capacity to move troops at scale. Meanwhile, so I want to talk about Russia now, guys, okay? Meanwhile, Russia have a massive artillery advantage, massive artillery advantage. Now, the Russians have around 7,500 artillery pieces. Very difficult to estimate this, guys. Very difficult to estimate these numbers. Obviously, you've got the Ukraine war, which is taking out artillery pieces, but also the Ukraine war, which is making the Russians build more artillery pieces. So I'm going with 7,500 pieces of artillery. Again, guys, I totally accept if people want to call me out on that number, but that's the number I'm going for, guys. That's the number I'm going for. Again, I could argue it could be slightly higher. I could argue it could be lower, but I'm going to go for 7,500. That dwarfs NATO's combined artillery. There's a little fly in here, guys, and he's just, I think I got him. That absolutely dwarfs NATO without the United States, guys. Absolutely dwarfs NATO without the United States. Again, these numbers are very difficult to find, guys. These numbers are very difficult to find. I would say NATO with, and again, guys, very difficult to find these numbers. I would say NATO without the United States, we have about 3,000 artillery pieces. And, you know, artillery kind of matters, guys. So the Russians have learned, there's no denying this, guys, okay? People think that people think that the Ukraine conflict was a testing ground for NATO weapons. It was. And you know what, guys? It's also a testing ground for Russia to test their systems on NATO weapons, kind of like a big sandbox. So the Russians have learned from Ukraine how to counter Western weapons like, like HIMARS, like the. Can you guys remember the beginning of this conflict in Ukraine? I know it's not a NATO weapon because in fact it is a NATO weapon. Actually, it's Turkey. So we're talking about European NATO. So you guys have seen how. Can you guys remember right at the beginning of the Ukraine conflict how there was loads of videos on YouTube of these? Sorry, guys. You guys can remember right at the beginning of this conflict with in the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, there was lots of videos all over the internet. Videos were all over the internet of these what are they called, Bayraktar drones. Yes, it's Bayraktar. It destroy everything. Like, where have those videos gone now? Where have those videos gone? Where have those videos gone? I tell you where they've gone, guys. They have gone because those videos are no longer being produced, because the Bayraktar drone has become obsolete, because the Russians can counter that. So while it's all well and good being able to field this technology, once you can counter that technology, it becomes obsolete. So it becomes a waste of money. So that's kind of like, again, as a rudimental matchup, guys, as a rudimental matchup between NATO and Russia. Guys, listen, there's lots of messages here. Let me just jump on some. Time to rise. Oh, in fact, hang on. Hang on. So Thomas Vale is saying Russia's largest tank army in the world, drone technology is making tanks a thing of the past. What do we think about that, guys? I could argue for and against that, guys. I really could. I could argue for and against that. I mean, we've all seen these, $200 drones take out tanks, but the reality is that doesn't happen much often. Sorry, that doesn't happen. I forgot to speak. That doesn't happen very often. Yes, when it does happen, the videos are shared all over, shared online, saying, "Oh, look, a $200 drone takes out a massive tank." The reality is, guys, that happens very rarely. Grumbling Grunts is saying it's interesting how our attention can quickly be switched from one thing to the next. It is Grumbling Grunts. I was speaking about this earlier on in the live stream, and I was saying, listen, do not count out the Labour Party for the next election. Guys, hang on a minute. I've got a fly in here. Let me just. I've got a fly in here. I've got superior technology. Who's going to win? The fly with its numbers or me with the superior technology? I don't know. We'll find out. I think I'm winning with the technology. That's a swizzle. But yeah, sorry, grumbling grunts. Yeah. So people were saying, you know, Labour's finished in the next election. And I was saying, look, guys, do not count out Labour in the next election. As Grumbling Grunts is saying, it's interesting how people's attentions can quickly switch from one thing to another. So listen, guys, Sadiq Khan, British Prime Minister, I'm going to talk about that later on. I am going to talk about that later on. It does look like Sadiq Khan is making a move for British Prime Minister. You guys who've been following me for a while, can you remember when I said, I feel there is a likelihood that Sadiq Khan is going to make a run for that Oval Office. That's America for number 10. Can you guys remember when we said that? It looks like that is happening now. But look, guys, I want to get back on track. War. NATO without the United States, would they be able to defeat Russia? Or would Russia be able to defeat NATO without the United States? Guys, listen, I am trying to be as objective as I can be with this analysis, guys. I really am. I'm trying to be as objective as I can be with this analysis. Dave Bry, 70, is saying NATO is the United States. Yeah, absolutely huge part of NATO. Time to Rise is saying illegals will take over the UK if we go to war. That's the plan. It just seems like that could be. It does seem like that could be on the cards, guys. I didn't get him. Where is he? Hang on, guys. I know this is not like. There's a little fly in here, and he keeps like coming in front of the screen. Right, he's gone. Maybe I've got him. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I said. Right, okay. Let's continue, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue. So we've talked about setting the stage. We've talked about comparing. And again, guys, I know there's a lot more to this, but I've kind of compared what I can. Just give you something to chew on, guys. I want to give you guys something to chew on, okay? So I'm going to give you some hard facts now. If NATO, and I mean NATO without the United, there is. And I mean NATO without the United States is short on ammunition. I think I got him. What's that? So if NATO, and by NATO I'm talking about European NATO, guys, now not the United States, is short on ammunition, which is an absolute issue. Believe me, guys, it's an issue. I've got friends in the military. I've got friends who are still in the military. And they're telling me, Geraldine McCardle is saying that spray is not good for you. Do you know what, Geraldine? It might not be good for me, but it's worse for the fly. That's just how we roll, guys. We have to do things sometimes we don't like. So here's something to chew on, guys, okay? So if NATO, without the United States, is short on ammunition, which is an absolute reality right now, guys. And I'm talking about heavy ammunition. I'm talking about 120 millimeter mortars. I'm talking about 105 millimeter howitzers. I'm talking about the big stuff, the real stuff that makes differences, which is a real issue after supplying Ukraine vast amounts. Could Russia's relentless shelling tip the scales? So we and this is kind of what we talk about with technology. And you've got one side, you've got the technology, and on the other side, you've got the lesser technology, but you've still got technology, but you've got the less red tape, cheaper stuff. Is it better to have the most fantastically built ammunition, or is it better to have more ammunition, even if it's not as accurate, even if it's not as good, even if it's not as consistent? I don't know. I don't know the answer, guys. And I will come on to that afterwards, guys, because there is something really key. There's something really key. And it's kind of what I've been talking about as well. And if you guys have been watching the channel, you know where I'm going to go with this. So, right, let me get some questions on YouTube, guys. I'm going to jump over to YouTube. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, when we're streaming in the mornings, I will always prioritize the TikTok, because we have subscribers only chat in the mornings, guys. I will always prioritize the subscribers in the morning. I'm just going to jump over now to YouTube again. From now, he's saying, Nostradamus, because we were talking about Nostradamus' predictions earlier on. Listen, guys, it's totally up to you if you guys take any weight on this. I don't know. As I get older, I kind of like think about this, and I'm like, well, how do they really know? What does that really mean? When I was younger, I'd be like, no, absolutely not. All this is nonsense. But as I get a little bit older, I'm like, oh, really? Is that really what's happening? So from now over on YouTube, he's saying Nostradamus predictions for 2025 include asteroid encounters and the end of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I've heard lots of these. Guys, give me a second. I'm going full frontal, guys. I'm going full frontal. Where are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Where are you coming from, you beasts? Go back to whence you came. Where are they? I mean, somebody left some food out. Do you know what? I bet one of the girls have been in here and there's a burger on the floor or something. I found it. Right, guys, I found it. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is wild today. I know this is wild. I found the culprit. One of my wine fermenters, I went away without cleaning it, and there's these little flies, and they've got all over it. Give me a second, guys. I'm about to give some superior technology to some inferior beings. Just hold it there. Right, this is right. I found the culprit. I found the culprit. But anyway, guys, sorry, guys. Let's continue. So, and Tracy Elliott's just jumped up on YouTube and said hi, and I'm saying hi right back to Tracy Elliott. Okay, so let's set the stage then, guys. We are talking about a hypothetical conflict between NATO minus the United States. Oh. Cassie is saying, oh, it's the fruit flies. There's an infestation of them in Yorkshire at the minute. Very fast little buggers. Yeah, there are, guys. Okay, so is this like a thing? Listen, guys, I didn't realize, okay? Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Russians have sent fruit flies over. Maybe the Russians have sent fruit flies over to annoy us. Listen, guys, I didn't realize, but thank you for keeping me updated, Cassie. Thank you, everyone, and Cassie especially. And Bluebird is saying special forces being controlled by flies. Yeah. Yeah, Google it, Sean. They like booze. Yeah, I've got an look, guys. Let's continue. I don't want this to descend into I don't want this to descend, guys. All right. I want to try and keep this quite serious. Okay. So we are talking about war between NATO minus the United States versus Russia. How are things going to play out? So, like I just said, guys, all right, we've got to understand there's a real problem with ammunition at the moment. It's all right supplying weapons. Yes, I have very big 105mm gun. How much ammunition do you have for that? I have no ammunition. All right, okay. I have #1 best sniper rifle in the world. I can light a match at 2 kilometers. No problem. How much ammunition do you have for that? We don't have any, too expensive. Like, you can see where we're going, guys. Okay, it's always about ammunition, not weapons. And so let's give some strategic scenarios, guys. Okay, now I understand that these scenarios I'm going to give are going to be, I'm going to try and keep these as rudimental as I can, guys, okay? As rudimental as I can. So let's imagine, you know, Vladimir Putin sat there, you know, he's sat in his office and he's thinking, guys, close in, guys. I need to, that's not Putin, is it? Sorry. Guys, close in. I need to find out what to do about this NATO expansion. NATO are preparing for war. They are spending more money on guns and bombs and stuff that can destroy us. Do we wait till they are at full strength or do we attack? We must attack now, Vladimir. It's very good. It's very simple. Keir Starmer doesn't know what he's doing. He may have new jacket, but he's still old Starmer. So, you know, like the scenario is, do we think realistically that the Russians are going to wait for NATO to be ready, before they strike? Or do you think they're going to strike first? If it was me, guys, you know, and I guess like if you go with not even international law, if you go with national law, self-defense law, if you know somebody's going to attack you, you can attack them. So, you know, the Russians could use that legislation, you know, to and I'm not saying they're going to, I'm saying that the legislation is there and it's international. If you believe you're going to be attacked, you can attack that person, you know, you can attack that person first. So let's just imagine then, guys, okay? Imagine Russia makes like a bold move, you know, maybe a lightning strike to the Baltics. Maybe they jump over Suwalki corridor. They do something, a big, bold move to test NATO's resolve. Now, without the United States, without the US aircraft, without the United States satellites, Europe's response would be very slow, guys, very slow. We just don't have the cards. We don't have the logistics to move the masses of people that's needed. So let's just say, for example, you know, Russia has made a move. They've gone over the Suwalki corridor. They've done something. How long is it going to take? How long is it going to take Europe's NATO, so like NATO light, to respond? And I'm going to say, guys, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a lot slower. And in that scenario, there's going to be early wins. Excuse me. You know, there's going to be early wins for Russia. So I will come on to what I've said previously, guys. Okay, so previously when I've spoke about this, I've talked about a slightly different scenario, but I will come on to that in a minute. So you can see if Russia pushes on the front foot, you would see early wins for Russia until NATO gets its act in order. But then, in a straight-up defensive fight, NATO's technology would push back. They would push back heavily. Like, if somebody pulls the pins on NATO and says, right, guys, this is weapons hot, you guys can do what you want, you will see a phenomenal amount of logistics being thrown at this, a phenomenal amount of stuff, ordnance being absolutely thrown at this conflict. So what if it drags on? So Russia, you know, as we've seen, Russia would prefer a longer conflict. Literally, guys, look back through history. There isn't one historic. In fact, guys, if somebody's a history buff out there and they know more about Russia than me, please put it in the comments. If you look back through history, I don't think there's any recorded event where Russia have started a war well. But the attrition, the drive, and the ability to just keep pushing slowly but surely, that's where Russia always succeeds, guys, okay? That is where Russia always succeeds. So, as we know, with the conflict in Ukraine, we'd literally go back as far as you want through recorded history, guys, okay? Russia and the Russians are very good at that, guys. They are very good at that. They're very good at long, brutal wars. They've got the manpower for it, okay? And because the Russians have set themselves up to fight wars of attrition, to fight with conscripts, they can keep that going. And again, listen, whether you like them or not, nobody can deny that the Russians The Russians don't flinch at taking mass casualties. Like they don't. Europe, what do we think, guys? What do we think? Do we think European leaders would accept making decisions where they know they're going to take mass casualties? I'm not convinced, guys. I know some countries would. I know other countries wouldn't. Other countries would push these things onto other European countries would push this onto other European countries. And, you know, and that's where you could see fractures in NATO. So Europe, then, I guess Europe have the money, guys. Europe really do have the money, guys. Like, Europe have the money to push this thing forward. Europe can keep printing and printing and printing euros, but then again, so can the Russians, because they control their own currency. But political cracks, I believe, would appear in a long conflict with Russia. Political cracks whereby, for example, Hungary has I'm going to say Hungary has pro-Russian leanings, guys. I really am. So countries like Hungary, you know, you would see these political cracks start. And then maybe the Hungarians just say, you know what, I'm not going to give any of my troops to this. No, we're not doing that. Maybe other countries would follow suit. This is what I'm talking about, okay? So you've got the Russians with slightly slower manpower, but more experience, but under one leadership. You've got NATO with more manpower on paper, better technology on paper, bigger budget, but vastly fractured in their leadership. So we can't talk about a conflict between Russia and NATO. We can't talk about any global conflict actually between nuclear powers if we don't talk about the threat of nuclear weapons, guys. Okay, now look, guys, I'll be quite clear with you guys. You guys know what I think about nuclear weapons. I don't think they're ever going to be used, guys. I don't, and you guys know the reasons why I don't think nuclear weapons are ever going to be used. I'm not going to talk about it now. I just don't think nuclear weapons are ever going to be used. However, let's just pretend I'm wrong. Let's just talk about it for a minute. So Russia have thousands. They do. They have thousands of nuclear warheads. Europe rely heavily on France and the United Kingdom, who have a few hundred. Now, when you're comparing these two things, it's kind of like comparing who has more cars. You know, we've got like 3 cars and a van. All right. So like I have 2 cars. You know, Sarah's got her own car, and we've got a van that's sawn, and we don't really use it. We keep saying we're going to convert it into a camper van, but they work and everything. So, like my 2 cars, I have to MOT them every year. I have to tax them every year. I have to service them every year. You know, I have to make sure they're serviceable. So it could be argued that we have 4 cars as a family. All right. If you go to your local scrapyard and say, how many cars have you got? He'll say, we've got like 200 cars. Do they have wheels? Do they have engines? Do they have gearboxes? You see where I'm going with this, guys? I would say, and I've got no information to back this up, guys, but I would say the Russian nuclear capability is drastically overplayed. I would say that to keep nuclear weapons functioning, you have to spend a lot of money on them. And I'm not convinced that the Russians have been able to spend that much amount of money on servicing their nuclear fleet. I just don't think it's there, guys. Okay. However, let's just pretend that it's true. What would happen? What would happen if Putin played that nuclear card? What would happen? So let's just say, and remember, guys, this is a hypothetical scenario for entertainment purposes. Let's just say, what would happen if Vladimir Putin played that nuclear card? How would NATO react? I think it'd be a mix, guys. I think it'd be a mix. Nobody wants to go tit for tat with nuclear weapons. Nobody wants to go tit for tat with nuclear weapons, guys. I don't know how NATO would react. Remember, guys, this is my personal opinion now, and you guys know I'm always right. So if I'm saying it, I'm saying it. You guys know it's not going to happen. I don't think nuclear weapons are ever going to be used, guys. I really don't. Putin had the best chance to use nuclear weapons when the Ukrainians went into the Kursk region of Russia. He had all the ticks in the boxes to use nuclear weapons, but he didn't. So I'm going to say there's a reason why people are not using nuclear weapons. Anyway. Let me ask you this, guys, okay? Let me ask you this, guys, real quick. And this is a question for the chat. Guys. I don't know the answer. I guess nobody knows the answer, thankfully. If Russia used a tactical nuclear weapon, so I mean like a small one, to try and scare NATO into backing off, would Europe stand firm and unite or fracture? Now, I don't know what the answer is. I want to say, obviously, because I'm a hopeless patriot, I want to say that would unite Europe into unity, I guess. They will come together, to fight the greater good. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know, guys. I do not know. I don't know what the scenario, what the end game, how that would play out. Right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me get some questions. I will jump on. Where am I going to jump on to? Muzammil. Right, guys, I'm getting a lot of Muzammils, Abduls, and Mohammeds trying to join my chat. Look, guys, I love you, Arabic brothers. I do. But if you want to jump on my chat, if you want to jump on my live stream, send me an inbox message first. Don't just jump on. I've tried to do that before, and I just get I've tried to do it before when I see people jump on and I click yes. I just get 3 or 4 guys, and they're sat in a room and they're all shocked. And I don't know what they're saying. So, English Patriot's gone straight to aliens, guys. English Patriot's gone straight to aliens. English Patriot is gone 3-eye Atlas, looking more like aliens. I agree. It's looking very strange. The asteroid 3-eye Atlas, guys. Listen, I just want to keep. Look, guys, I want to keep this for the next couple of minutes anyway. For the next 20. Well, I don't know. Wow, we're on 44 minutes already, guys. Listen, at least for the next 15 minutes, I want to keep this onto the war. NATO minus the United States. Could they win a pitched battle against Russia? Or if you want to look at the other side, and I'm trying to be as objective as I can here, guys, could the Russians defeat NATO without the United States? So Grumbling Grunts is saying, I believe Russia has already flexed its muscles with a chemical attack in Salisbury. Yeah, can you remember that, guys? That was quite funny, wasn't it? It wasn't that. Stop, Raven. That wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. It was wild, right? It was wild that these 2 GRU operatives, allegedly, these 2 GRU operatives snuck into the United Kingdom. Yes, we just come to Salisbury to look at the great cathedral in Salisbury. It has a 157-meter mast. I come all the way from Russia to see this. My friend Yuri, yes, we come on separate flights, but then we become friends, and then we're not friends because we leave in different flights. I don't know, guys. What do we think? Do we think they're legit, or do we think it was a real Russian op? Bluebird is saying there are no winners in nuclear war. I agree. James is saying, Sean, that wasn't fly spray. That was your hairspray. It looks good, by the way. Does my hair look good? In fact, I don't even need to look, guys. I know that my hair always looks good. But thank you for noticing, guys. Thank you for noticing. English Patriot, don't worry. We're going to come on to that later. Right. Okay, I'm going to jump up and get some comments from YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, I will always prioritize the YouTube comments in the morning. In the evening when I'm doing a live stream, guys, it's a kind of a bit of a free for all. But listen, guys, we are talking about war. NATO without the United States versus Russia. Who is going to win? What does a win even mean anymore? From now, he's saying, did you hear the new Chinese mosquito-sized drone designs for reconnaissance and surveillance? Yeah, I did. I saw this, but the problem with all these small drones is the battery life. The battery life of these drones, you might get like 10, 15 minutes out of it. Realistically, you're not really going to do much. I think what the method of that drone is just to be able to fly it somewhere for like 5 minutes. So you fly that somewhere for 5 minutes and then you land it. And once you land that drone, it can transmit for a lot longer. From now he's saying, John, scary the Foosers. Silly Gallardi saying good evening, and good evening to you, Silly Gallardi. How are things in your part of the world? I think that the big question referenced NATO, Russia. Yeah, Silly Gallardi, fantastic. Yeah. Look, guys, I've always said, when we're looking at global conflicts, the two main players that are like the wild cards in this scenario are Turkey and India. Now, it does look like India have a more NATO-friendly stance right now, and I know they're a BRICS member, but look, guys, it just adds to the layers of complexities when we're looking at geopolitics. But yeah, as Silly Gallardi is saying over on YouTube, Turkey is a massive wild card. Turkey will do what's best for Turkey at that time. Very difficult to try and like second guess what Turkey will or will not do. Slim is saying nuclear weapons could ruin your whole weekend. They could ruin your whole weekend, maybe even the whole summer as well. Haven't we had a pants summer, guys? Hasn't summer been plonk this year? Summer's been absolutely plonk. Oh, hang on. So from now, he's coming in with a conspiracy theory that nuclear weapons don't exist, just a fear thing. But the people of Japan, now what's that about? I don't know. I would say nuclear weapons definitely do exist, guys. I just don't think they're ever going to be used again. Google it is saying, Sean, in fact, let me pin this. So Google it over on TikTok. He's saying, Sean, you seem like the type of guy who would like a post-apocalyptic world. You'll know how to survive. Listen, guys, I'm not sugarcoating this. I am going straight from, you know how like society will break down in phases. You will get phases where normal people still think that the rule of law applies. There will be a time where people are still following rules. Nobody's raiding, nobody's pillaging, and there will be a time, not for Raven, guys. I am going straight to a leather jacket, cut off arms, face mask, leather chaps, and a big stick. I'm going straight to apocalyptic warlord, guys. As soon as something happens, I'm going straight to it. Like, I literally carry my apocalyptic kit in the back of my car wherever I go, because I don't want to be caught out in the apocalypse, guys. I do not want to be that guy who gets caught out in the apocalypse and he's like, Sean, the apocalypse started, you've not got your apocalypse clothes. I'm like, oh man, I carry them in the car. I always carry them in the back of the car. And Sharon Owen is saying good evening to you, Sharon Owen. Right, guys, listen, let's continue, okay? I want to give with some geopolitical realities now, guys. I'll give a little bit of a reality check. So, listen, guys, if you're just joining for the first time, can you do me a real big favor? I mean, it's 50 minutes now. I've been on 50 minutes, and I kind of need to do this a lot more. Can you like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification? We are triple streaming today, guys. So hit the buttons down below. Hang on. I'll do that later. So we are talking today, ladies and gentlemen, about the prospect of war between, look, guys, tell me how likely you think it is that NATO, without the United States, may have to face against the Russians. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is a hypothetical conversation. While we're on TikTok, this is just for educational entertainment purposes only. However, let's continue with some geopolitical realities. And I believe I can say I excel in this. So let's zoom out, guys, and give like a 10,000 feet, let's give a 10,000 feet view. So Europe have a massive, massive, massive economic edge. I could argue, what does that even mean? But let's just go with it, guys. I want to try and be as objective as I can be. And I know there are multiple layers of intricacy with everything I'm saying, but we'll try and address them at the end. So, no denying it, guys, Europe has a massive economic edge. Around about 20 trillion in GDP compared to Russia's 2 trillion GDP. NATO, European NATO, with European nations, can outspend Russia in a long war. They can, 100%, guys. But let's not forget, Russia has allies too. China, Iran, North Korea, who knows who else, maybe even Pakistan, other nations that would support Russia. Why? Simple answer, oil, energy. But, so what I want to talk about here, guys, is just, not, I know it's just, I know the live stream we started with could NATO, Europe versus Russia. I just wanted to throw that in there, guys. I just wanted to throw that in there as a little bit of a side swipe. Now, without the United States, though, NATO loses allies like Japan, Australia, which often follow America's lead. And as I think it was Silly Gallardi on YouTube said about Turkey. Now, I don't think Turkey would be interested in getting involved in this conflict, guys. But, and I don't think they, I genuinely don't think they would. So what I'm going with is a European NATO. So the European nations of NATO versus Russia. That's where I'm going with this, guys. Okay. So, excuse me. So here's where it gets tricky, and it gets tricky fast. The other day when we were talking about unity is everything, guys. Without unity, you fall. Without together we stand, divided we fall. I don't think there's ever been a better phrase than that. So Europe need to unify fast. We need to unify fast. Now, the Russians know this, so I don't think the Russians are going to go for the big spectacular, because I think that would unify NATO. What I think Russia is going to go for is the slow inch by inch approach. Nobody laugh when I just said that, the slow inch by inch approach, guys. Don't laugh. Any of you ex-military, don't be laughing about that. So that's what I think the Russians are doing, guys, okay? The slow. Yes, of course, we want to come to peace negotiation. We are still bombing country, but don't worry. We still move forward with don't worry. Yes, of course, we take 20 kilometers today. Yes, and yesterday 20 kilometers. And day before, of course. But we not make big move. We just make slow move, not to unify country. Then we spread propaganda all over Europe. But anyway, guys, listen, this is going to become tricky because Europe needs to unify fast. Now, we need to unify under one leader. And unfortunately, that leader is going to be Keir Starmer. Whether you like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, initially, that unifying leader is Keir Starmer. Look, guys, you guys know how I feel about this. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation, guys, okay? That's the reality of the situation. Europe needs to unify. We need to come under one leader, and that leader needs to be Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, Granny Harmer, so you see where the cracks are emerging now. So, for example, if Germany, if Poland, probably Poland's definitely not going to hesitate. If what I'm talking about here, guys, if Germany, Hungary, maybe one of the Baltic states, if somebody hesitates or if somebody coughs, then you see those fractures in Europe, in the European project. And the Russians are going to exploit that, guys. They're going to exploit it with cyber attacks. They're going to exploit it with sabotage. They're going to exploit it with non-conventional warfare. They're going to exploit this with all the things we've been talking about these, on these live streams. For example, can you remember the pipelines that went kaboom? Can you remember the potential of internet cables being cut? All these things could happen, and I suspect will happen. This is what we talk about: non-conventional warfare, asymmetric warfare, grey warfare, soft warfare, if there is such a thing. So what we've got to understand is, guys, here's another question for you guys, okay? Here's another question. How much does political unity matter? How much does political unity matter in a wartime scenario? I would say it's kind of like, I would say it's more important than the strength of your military, guys. I would say it's, and I'm coming from a military point of view, guys, okay? I would say if you've not got any political unity, whereby the Russians have political unity, they have one leader, they have one goal, they have one vision. In European NATO, we have like 31 leaders with 31 different visions. So you can see where the problems are going to, where you can see where the problems are going to arise. So I don't know, guys, what are your thoughts there, guys? Okay. And who would take that role? Who would take that role? Obviously the United Kingdom the United Kingdom should take that role. Normally that role would be held together by the United States. The United States would take that role. But without the United States, I don't know, guys. I don't know who would take that role. So who would win? So who would win, guys? So we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the geopolitical realities. We have talked about, what else we've talked about? Like strategic scenarios. We have talked about military matchups. And we have set the scene for a potential hypothetical conflict between Europe minus the United States versus Russia. So we get to the crunch points now, guys. Who would win? Who's going to win it, guys? Who's going to win it? Who's got the? First of all, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand, what does a win actually mean? Because there's going to be no winners. There's going to be no winners. There's going to be losers and bigger losers. Unfortunately, guys, all wars have losers and bigger losers. There's no winners in a war. So let's try and wrap this up, guys, with a big question, all right? Who comes out on top? And I'm talking about like a decisive military win, of course. When I mean win, I mean the lesser loser. So in short, a high intensity short war under 12 months, my money's on NATO, guys. My money's on NATO. Technology, coordination, if we can do that. Better trained soldiers, better equipped soldiers, better, more competent soldiers would overwhelm Russia quickly. Especially defending their home turf. I mean, if this war is fought on Poland, the Baltic nations, Czech Republic, sorry, not Czechoslovakia, sorry, as I keep saying, so a fast, high intensity war, NATO take it every time NATO take it. But here's the kicker, guys. Here's the kicker. In a long slog, Russia's great artillery, their acceptance to take a higher mortality rate, that would grind Russia down. That would grind Europe down, guys. Okay, especially if ammunition becomes low. And when I mean ammunition, I don't mean little 5.56 rounds. I mean real ammunition, guys. 120mm mortars, 105 howitzers. I mean, the bigger bomb, you must use bigger bomb. No, Sean, small bomb is big problem. It's very small. It not do much damage. You need the bigger bomb. You know, I'm talking about bigger ammunition now, guys, the real ammunition. I'm talking about someone coming from a light, light mobile infantry background, right? The bigger artillery. Like, look, guys, you can have the best special forces in the world. You can have like SAS guys who've had children with SEAL Team 6 guys, while a Malinois dog was giving some of his DNA. Like, you can have those children and you can train them to be your best special forces. If they get bombarded with a 120 millimeter mortar, they're as gone as the rest of us. So, you know, when I talk about ammunition, I talk about the big ammunition, guys, okay? The big ammunition. Big ammunition, very big, very powerful. So in short, to wrap this up, guys, okay, if we're talking about a conflict between Russia and Europe, a quick conflict, NATO takes it, guys. NATO takes it. A slow, dragged out conflict, unfortunately, guys, the Russians take that every time. Now, my analysis, stepping back now, guys, my analysis of this scenario is that it's going to be a slow, long, drawn-out conflict because of the political structuring of NATO, the political structuring of Europe. The nations of Europe are not going to want to go full frontal. They're not going to want to go, let's go for it, guys. Let's pull the pins and let's just go. The NATO countries in Europe, they will not do that. There will not be political will. And because there's not political will, guys, listen, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. What do you think, guys? Do you think I know what I'm talking about? Maybe I've done this before. Maybe I've spoke about this before to other people. I don't know. Maybe I'm just waffling here and I'm just making everything up. But I honestly, guys, the way NATO is, European NATO now without the United States, the way NATO is structured now without the United States, I'm giving it to Russia, guys, and I'm saying this as somebody who lives in the United Kingdom, and who is pro-West, pro-democracy. I give this to Russia, guys. I really do. I give this to Russia. I give it to Russia. Now, I'm going to talk about nuclear weapons now, real quick, guys. I'm going to talk about nuclear weapons. I don't think nuclear weapons are ever going to be used. So I want to take that caveat out of my vocabulary and just think for a second, you know, how that would pan out, how it would pan out. So first of all, it's a lose-lose. It's lose-lose, guys. It's lose-lose. It's like lose-lose. It's not just lose-lose. It's like lose-lose-lose and everybody loses. So Russia may try, and again, guys, look, I know I've just said it, but I want to keep caveating this. I don't think this is ever going to happen, but let's just say, for example, that Russia tried to force a stalemate in the context that in the early days of this conflict, I remember, ladies and gentlemen, hypothetical conflict between NATO without the United States and Russia, who would win? So we're talking about the NATO forces now pushing against Russia. Russia looks like it's going to lose ground and territory, and they launch a nuclear weapon. Again, guys, I don't think that's ever going to happen. It's a massive gamble. Hybrid tactics like cyber attacks could give Russia an edge. Cyber attacks, sabotage, non-conventional warfare, like what we have in the United Kingdom, where we are massively subverted, could give Russia an edge, guys, without even firing a shot. But European resilience over time, you know, coming together, that may also play a factor. With the nuclear weapons, I think the only scenario, and again, guys, I know I keep saying it, I've said it maybe 4 times in the last minute. I don't think this is going to happen, but I think the only scenario for nuclear weapons to be used is if NATO forces pushes into Europe, pushes the Russians back into Russia, and then the NATO forces are at the Russian border. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it's ever going to happen, and I don't think it is, that is when it's going to happen. So one final question for you guys. One final question, ladies and gentlemen. One final question. If you were a NATO leader, I know what my answer to this is going to be. if you was a NATO leader right now, and I don't know if you are, I don't know if there's any NATO leaders watching. In fact, if there aren't any NATO leaders watching, come and put me on a small retainer and I'll tell you what's happening. I'll tell you what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 12 months. But if you were, and this is a question to the chat, guys. It's an open question, okay, to the chat. So if you was a NATO leader and you don't have the support of the United States, and this is the kicker, guys, would you go all in to stop Russia, or would you play it cautious to avoid escalation? I know what I do. So there's a question, guys. I'm going to jump off screen in a second and caffeinate myself, and then I'm going to come on to your comments and I'll get your answers to that question, guys, okay? So the question is this. If you were a NATO leader, any NATO leader, you know, would you go all in and support full frontal against Russia, or would you play it cautious to try and avoid escalation? What would you do, guys? What would you do? I'm just going to jump off. Screen, guys, and caffeinate myself, and I will be straight back, and then I'll give a little bit of a final thought. So Googly is saying, I would go full force. Russia knows their first move is escalation. And Googly is also saying, I am a NATO leader. KT is saying, yes, but when should we be expecting all this? Oh, let me pin this. KT. So KT on TikTok is saying, when should we be expecting all this? Not within the next couple of weeks, that's for sure. Not within the next couple of weeks. The Russians, they want a slow, dragged on. They want a slow war. And NATO are not. The Europeans are not ready for that. James is saying, Sean, respect to you, but you know what I think? You guys know what I say when people say respect to you, but in a sentence. I always say this, guys, okay? When somebody says but in a sentence, it means they don't believe the thing they've said previously. But anyway, let's go with it. Well, what James is saying. Where's James's comment gone? James's comment's just vanished. Yeah. Sean, respect to you, but if NATO goes... Sorry, Sean, respect to you, but if Russia goes toe-to-toe with 35 countries, NATO, they will use nukes. I don't think they will, guys. James, listen. Let's hope none of us are proved right or wrong. I would say, look, guys, I've been quite clear. I don't think anybody's ever going to use nuclear weapons again. I don't think anybody is ever going to use nuclear weapons again. I don't, guys. I don't think anybody's ever going to use nuclear weapons again. I think there's more to this. I'm not going to talk about it now. I've talked about it many times, guys. I don't think anybody's going to use nuclear weapons ever again. So James is saying, to seriously damage Russia, you need to use cruise missiles. NATO hasn't yet. Keg is saying, Sean, do you think they'll bring back national service soon? So we're already seeing this, guys, aren't we? We're already seeing this with the uptick in pro-military videos that have been released on TikTok, pro-military videos that have been released on X, pro-military, you know those little 30-second videos that you see? There's a lot of pro-military stuff being pushed out there now. So what is happening right now, we're seeing the first phase of recruitment. I'd say this is going to come in 3 phases, guys, okay? And the last phase would be conscription or national service, whatever you want to call it. So the first phase would be, recruitment. because you're going to want to get the people who are motivated to fight. You're going to want to get those people first. You're going to want to drag those into your service. You're going to want to train them and get them up to whatever standards that is, like whether that's class 4 rifleman or I don't know, guys. If there's anybody in the military and I'm wrong, please let me know. When I was in the military, it was like, I think you joined the army as a class 4 private. You then after you did a radio users course, you like got to class 3. I don't know how it works now, but basically what I'm talking about here is you want to get as many motivated soldiers into your ranks as possible. And then you close them off. You say, right, we've got you guys. You guys are there. You guys are the motivated soldiers. And then whether it's conscription, whether it's national service, it kind of doesn't matter because the next 2 phases will be hand in hand. You're going to have to get an amount of people who are able for military service. You're going to have to get them into military service. And then there's going to be an amount of people who are not capable for military service. You're going to have to get them doing something for the military war effort. But look, guys, I guess the elephant in the room right now is we have millions of people in the United Kingdom who don't care about the United Kingdom. I mean, I don't know. Do you think the United Kingdom would? Do you think the border force of the United Kingdom will be like cutting the rubber dinghies when people are trying to flee? So yeah, we have to understand that. And we have an amount of people in the UK who just do not identify as British, guys. They do not identify as British. I don't think they need to be here, but they are. Tony Baloney, listen, this is a tricky one, Tony Baloney. Tony Baloney on TikTok is saying, where did that go? Where's that gone? Tony Baloney's comment, right, I can read it here, actually. Sometimes when I click the comments, guys, the comment thing just flies up and I lose the comment, but I've got it here. So Tony Baloney, who loves macaroni, is saying, motivated to fight, ? For this government who give nothing to ex-servicemen. Tony Baloney, I agree 100% with you, mate. I can't argue. What I will say is you will get, I can guarantee you will get vast amounts of young men answering that call. Because we have a vast amount of young men who are patriotic. And you will have a vast, for you, for me, we understand the bigger picture. For people who are younger, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, maybe even into mid-20s, those guys are just going to go for the patriotism. And like charity, does patriotism start at home, guys? Does patriotism start at home? Yeah, so I agree totally with you, Tony Baloney, what you just said. 100%. Right, where are we going to go now? Where are we going to go? Which one are we going to go to? YouTube or TikTok? What are we going to go to? Debbie Doobs over on YouTube is saying there's only a 15 to 20 minute window to decide to retaliate against a nuclear attack. The fear of escalation afterwards. And I think it would be a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. So what I will say to that, Debbie Doobs, is, you know, like at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Listen, guys, I'll talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then I'll give my final thoughts, and then I'll give my final thoughts, and then we'll close down on you. Wow, guys, we've been on quite a while, and I'll close down TikTok, and we'll continue on YouTube for a little bit. So. Height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That is, nobody can deny the Cuban Missile Crisis is the closest we have gone as a planet to all-out nuclear war. Literally all-out nuclear war, guys. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. You guys who've been following me for a while, you guys, I know I've talked about how the Cuban Missile Crisis shaped the Vladimir Putin that we have today, because he was like 10 or 11 at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So we understand now how these geopolitical events shape things, affect things. So the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis was such that and again, so this is from the comment from Debbie Doobs over on YouTube saying, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, as far to nuclear weapons. And again, guys, quick caveat, I don't think this is ever going to happen. But we literally had in the United Kingdom. Can you put yourself in this scenario, guys? If you're a woman, and call me sexist if you want. If you're a woman, put yourself in this scenario. Your husband comes to you, right? He's in your husband's in the RAF. Your husband's in the RAF. He's a bomber pilot, and he comes to you and he says, "Love, if you see the bombers leave today en masse, you get the kids, you get in the car, you drive as fast as you can, speed if you have to, you get to northwest Scotland and you stay there." Can you imagine if he says that to you and he just, that's all he says? Get the bags packed, get the kit in the car. This is stuff that was happening, guys, at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And if you're a man, imagine imagine being in the, I mean, I'd love it, guys. I would love to be in the cockpit of a Vulcan bomber. Imagine you're a man and you're sat there in the cockpit of a Vulcan bomber. Your mission is to destroy, this is real, guys. This really happened. Your mission is to destroy Eastern Europe. I don't mean the odd town, city settlement and the odd strategic location. No, all of it gone. Britain, the whole of Britain's V-force was on the runway at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The guys were sat in the cockpits of the aircraft with the engines running, and the ground crew were pouring fuel into the fuel tanks. They had one shot at this. So the mission was for the RAF and Britain as the vanguard of Europe was if the Russians had launched nuclear missiles, Britain was going to go and take out Eastern Europe. And they actually said to the pilots, they said to them, don't bother trying to come back and land in the UK because there'll be no UK left. Go and land in America. That's literally what they said to the pilots. Guys, go and check it out. So can you imagine like what, and nobody knew about this, guys. It was totally secret. It was held from the public. And this is obviously Nikolai Khrushchev was sending the ships down to Cuba. He said to Kennedy, we're gonna put nuclear weapons on Cuba. Kennedy said, no, you're not. Khrushchev said, yes, we are. Kennedy said, if you get past this line, we're going to sink your ships. Khrushchev said, if you sink our ships, we're going to go nuclear. Kennedy said, let's drop this smoky gun wagon. And that was the Cuban Missile Crisis, guys. And people can argue, people who understand history like I do, you could argue that was the beginning to the end of the Soviet Union, and we have what we have now. That's why you need to understand history to understand Vladimir Putin, and you need to understand Vladimir Putin to understand what Russia wants. So when you get all these mainstream media pundits saying, oh, but this general says this general says this, doesn't matter, guys. It doesn't matter. Right. Anyway, guys, I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts. I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts. And I'm going to jump over to YouTube for a couple of minutes and I will close in down. Guys, listen, I've been on for quite a while today. Normally, I will do like 45 minutes on TikTok and then jump over to YouTube, but I've been going on for quite a while, guys. So it's going to be quite a short one today on YouTube. Not least because we have got Lord of the Rings playing in the house. So I want this scenario, guys, to be like a wake-up call. I'd like this kind of scenario to, this scenario I've just talked about, and I don't know who's watching these videos, guys. All our videos are downloaded onto YouTube. So if anybody's watching, like military colonels and stuff, just give me a call, guys. Send me a message. I will answer all your questions and tell you what's going to happen. But the problem is they don't do this. I've been in those roles before and I've told people what's going to happen next and they don't listen. Do you know why they don't listen? Because they don't want to listen to me with my fantastic hair and my my tendency to talk about aliens and asteroids and intergalactic war. They don't like that. They prefer to go to a think tank and spend millions of pounds on a think tank because it makes people feel better. If you spend money on something, you think you've got a better product. Well, you haven't. So anyway, guys, I want this to be a wake-up call for Europe, okay? Europe is strong, but the United States is a game changer. I believe the United States are going to leave NATO. They might not leave NATO totally, but I think the United States are going to leave NATO to deal with Europe on their own. Because remember, guys, the United States have to deal with what's going to happen in the Middle East. We know this. And I'll probably do a live stream on, you know, guys, tomorrow I'll talk about that. So I think NATO needs to prepare for a world where they're flying solo, guys. I think NATO need to prepare for a world where they are rolling solo, where they're rolling without US intelligence, without US satellites, without US space infrastructure, without US logistics, without US air support. I really do, guys. I think Europe need to unify, guys. I really do. I think Europe needs to unify. And look, guys, if you want to be a pro-Russia guy, and if my advice to the Russians would be strike now while the beast is weak. That would be my advice to Russia, because I want to keep everyone on straight and narrow, and I want to be as objective as I can be. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to close this down now. I'm going to close this down now on TikTok. I will be over on YouTube for a couple of minutes, and then I'll be closing that down as well. Because listen, guys, just for context, all right, we've been watching Lord of the Rings, right? I thought I said, right, you know what, we're gonna go right back to the Fellowship. And you know when the Fellowship comes on, you know when the Fellowship of the Rings comes on, and like, honestly, guys, it sends, like, every time the Fellowship of the Rings comes on, it sends like the hairs on the back of my, it sends the hairs up, and I get so, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. You know, when the narrator's saying that there was an allegiance of elves and men, and you know, it's just beautiful. You know, the final allegiance of elves and men who fought on the slopes of Mount Doom. It's beautiful, guys. It's beautiful. So we are watching Lord of the Rings at the moment, guys. We're going to go back in. I'm going to go back in the house. We just got to the part where there's a secret council in Rivendell. I mean, how awesome is that bit when who is it? Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler's on the horse, and she's got Frodo, and all the wraiths are chasing her, and she's going, and she's running quick. She's running quick. And then she gets to the river by Rivendell, and she's at the river, and she knows her magical work in Rivendell, and the wraiths try and get over the river, and she casts a spell, and he sends them down the river. It's beautiful, guys. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I am choking up, K-Ring. I'm choking up there. I get patriotic, guys. I get choked up about Lord of the Rings, but we are watching Lord of the Rings at the moment, guys. We are watching Lord of the Rings, and it's just got to the point where they're at the secret council, and Gimli's just hit the ring with the axe, and it's broken the axe. And then Gandalf's had to jump up and shout he's had to speak in the Mordor language, whatever the Mordor language is. But ladies and gentlemen, we are going to turn this off now. I'm going to be over on YouTube for a little bit, and then we will be closing that down. We'll be closing that down, guys, and I'll see you in the morning. I'll be back on at 10, I believe. I think I'll be back on it. Yes, I hope I'll be back on at 10. I'd like to be back on at 10. I should be back on at 10 in the morning, and I'll let you guys know where we got to on Lord of the Rings. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you guys on TikTok, I'm going to close you guys down now, and I will be on YouTube, and I'll be closing that down as well. And relax, everyone. Yeah, guys, didn't I just get choked up then? I don't know. When we talk about the final resistance of elves and men, I don't know. Something primal comes over you, and you think, yeah, do you know what? At some point, we're going to have like the final resistance, you know, between whoever the elves and men are. I don't know. What I do know is when Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, when Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings and his whole books, he was referring, and it's quite, he's well out there. He was referring to the orcs and the rising power in the East. He was referring to them as the Russians, guys. He was referring to them as the Russians. And if you guys look into history, a lot of the let me be clear. I know I'm not on TikTok, but I still need to be clear because I don't know. I wasn't there. But some accounts, in fact, you know what, guys, bollocks. The people I've spoken to, Ukrainians who were alive at that time, real old Ukrainians who were alive at that time, they've told me exactly the differences, how the Russians were, what the Russians used to do, how the Russians treat people. So, there's a lot of propaganda at the moment. What we'll say is this, guys. When Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, he wrote in the orcs, and he wrote them in as the Russians. From now, we're saying Putin still mentions World War II when he talks about Germany. He's like Uncle Albert. Do you know what? I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, I joined the army in in 99. Okay, so I joined the army in 99. And I was taught call it 2000 or whatever. So my instructors, they went to the Falklands in 82. And I'm 40 now. I know this is weird, but you know when you have those like epiphany moments. So I was thinking, there was 40 years, less than 40 years between the Falkland Islands and World War II. And I'm 40 something now, like, I don't know, maybe I'm 43 or something, maybe 44. So I'm in my mid 40s now. And I was just thinking the time scale is nothing. The time scale is nothing, and like those people fighting the Falklands War, they might have been 10. Some of those guys might have been 10 in the Second World War. So these wars are not as long ago as people think. We all think the Second World War was like a long time ago. In historical context, it's nothing. It's nothing, guys. 40 years, 50 years, 100 years is nothing in historical context. It's a human lifetime. Lisa Jane is saying, do I need to get myself a little car and get ready to drive and hide in the fields of Scotland? No, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe. Listen, guys, I do not believe ever. I don't believe ever that that there's going to be nuclear weapons dropped. I don't believe that's ever going to happen, guys. Look, I guess we're on YouTube now, and the reason, look, guys, this is kind of the reason why I do my own stuff now, because I look at things holistically. I think there's a deeper reason why nobody's ever used nuclear weapons since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I do, guys. I think there's a deeper reason why nobody has ever used nuclear weapons. Now, and I just don't think nuclear weapons are ever going to be used again. So in direct response to you, Lisa Jane, do I need to get myself a little car and get ready to just drive and hide in the fields of Scotland? I would say no. I would say no, you do not. Debbie Dennis is saying, think I'll have to watch them or read them. Oh, are you talking about Lord of the Rings? Look, guys, Lord of the Rings for me is the greatest. They're the greatest movies that have ever been, ever that we've ever witnessed. We are never going to get another Lord of the Rings, guys. We're never going to get another Lord of the Rings. Lisa Jane is saying, I remember the Falklands War too. So, Lisa Jane, just real quick, and a question for you, Lisa Jane. You're saying you remember the Falklands War. Does it seem that long ago to you, or can you remember, it vividly? You know, and can you think, and does it seem a long time ago, or do you remember it like it was yesterday? That's a question for you, Lisa Jane. I'd love to know your answer to that. Silly Gallardi is saying, Silly Gallardi, you jump up at key points and then you just like vanish. Silly Gallardi is saying the very old Ukrainian were very happy to collaborate with the word I can't say. I'm just going to say the Germans, right? Now, Silly Gallardi, I've spoken to oh look, guys, Silly, I've spoken to Ukrainians about this. Because I don't know if you guys know, a lot of Ukrainians left Ukraine and went with the Germans when the Germans were getting when the Russians came in and when the Russians pushed them back. So this is from first-hand accounts, okay? And look, guys, I don't know every account. I'm telling you guys what I've spoken to people about. And the Ukrainians I've spoken about, very, very old Ukrainians, guys, really old Ukrainians, like in their 90s. They said that the Russians would treat them very badly. They would not pay for anything. They would do things to girls that you guys are thinking about. They would hurt people unnecessarily. And then when we talk about the Germans were polite. And this is what they've told me, guys. Okay, this is what they've told me. And what I will say is not every German. I don't think every German was bad, guys. Okay, and you know, I don't think every Russian's bad. I don't think all. Do you know what, guys? I'm going to say this. I'm going to say in general, I think people are good. You know, I've been to some really dark parts of the world, and you know, there's good people there. There's always good people. So what I'm going to say is, in direct response to Silly Gallardi, well, actually, my question is back to Silly Gallardi. Were the Ukrainians collaborating with the Germans? And you guys know the word I'm talking about. I can't say that word on YouTube or I'll get the video restricted. Were the Ukrainians collaborating with the Germans because the Germans were treating the Ukrainians better or worse than the Russians? That's a simple question. You know, so what do we think? It's a simple question. Do we think that the Ukrainians working with, and again, you've got to put yourself in their scenario back in what was it, like, was it 38, maybe 39? You kind of don't care about geopolitics if you're starving, if you're worried for your life and worried for the safety of you and your family. So what do you really care about? You know, the people who treat you well or the people who do not? And let's not forget, guys, you know, in after the Second World War was over, Winston Churchill, love him, he got all the guys in and he said, "Come in here, guys, come in here. I've got a plan." I can't do Winston Churchill. But Winston Churchill got everybody in and he started Operation Unthinkable. Now, Operation Unthinkable was literally that. Winston Churchill wanted to turn 180 on the Russians. He wanted to bring the German army on board, and he wanted to say, right, you guys are not the N-word. You guys are now German soldiers working for the coalition, and we're going to go and fight the Russians. That's real, guys. You know, you guys can go and look at that. You know, you guys can look at that, go and look that up. The Americans, the politicians are like, "Oh, Winston, we've had too much war. We've won. Let's just take the W." I don't know, guys. Maybe he was right. Maybe he wasn't. It's the one and only J-Dog is saying, I dated a German. When I looked back, it had only been 30 years since World War II. I think what J-Dog is saying there is, these time scales, we kind of think things happened a lot longer than they didn't. And Silly Gallardi is saying, in my heritage, what happened to my people in WW2? Ukrainians were the worst. Yeah, I mean, I think what we can, looking back at these things, I mean, look, guys, obviously I wasn't there. I'm speaking to people in real time, and I'm listening to their opinions and what they're telling me. I don't even know how to answer that, Silly. I don't even know how to respond to that. How do you respond to that when how do you respond? How do you Silly, are you saying that the Ukrainians were worse than the Russians? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? That the Ukrainians were worse than the Russians? Fourpaws is saying, I remember the Falklands War, the young couple who lived next door and recently married, he never came back. Simon Weston was a local lad, and we saw him on his journey with ops to fix his face. Yeah, there's a lot of question marks about Simon Weston, guys. I know a lot of parachute regiment guys who won't talk to him or even be in the same room as him. Yes, he was massively injured, but there's a lot of strategic decisions that were made before that led to that. John Young is saying, born 56, just 11 years after the war finished. There were still rations in the 60s. So yeah, guys, listen, what we're talking about here is, these conflicts, although we think they're like ancient history, they're not ancient history. We still have people who lived through those, and it does look like, as we were talking about at the beginning of this, war, NATO without the United States versus Russia. How is that gonna how is that gonna pan out? Just as a quick one, guys, I know I've said this, I'll say it again. I think a short war, if it can be a short war and Europe can unify, it's going to be a European win or a NATO win. I don't think Europe can do that. So I think it's going to be a Russian W. I do, guys. I think it's going to be a Russian W, as we are now. Ileana Ralianu. Am I saying that right? I know I'm getting your first name right. Ileana Ralianu. I think I'm saying that right. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, Ileana, I apologize. Saying, I'm from Moldova. My grandparents all mentioned that the Germans were much better than the Russians. They gave people tinned food. They took care of children. See, this is what I'm getting from the people I've spoken to in Ukraine. And they've said to me, the reason they went, maybe they collaborated with the Germans. I don't know. History is very distorted and it's always written by the victor. Maybe they collaborated with the Russians. Maybe they with the Germans. Maybe they didn't. But from what I've been told, the Germans treat the Ukrainians a lot better. And the Ukrainians were scared of the Russians and they didn't want to be part of the Russians. You don't want to hear about you don't want to hear their opinion about Russians, believe me. Ileana, listen, I've spoken to many people in Ukraine. I totally understand. And Silly Gallardi is coming up with an opposite, with an opposite perspective, I guess, saying, watch the documentary Shoah. I'm talking about what happened to Jews. Russia was horrific after the Second World War. but Ukraine was the worst. So, Silly Galadi, are you saying that the Ukrainians? Are you saying? So, Silly Galadi, are you saying that the Ukrainians were? Look, guys, I need to be careful. Silly Galadi, you're trying to trip me up here, and I don't want to get the video banned, and I don't want to get the video restricted. Silly, are you saying? Silly, I will 100% look into this because I never want to catch myself with my own pants down. Silly Galadi, are you saying that the Ukrainians were worse to the Jewish population than the Russians were, or I guess the German? Is that what you're saying, Silly? Because I'm trying to get like, is that what you're saying? I don't know, Silly. I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes for you to respond because I really want to know what I really do want to look into this, guys. Listen, I'm not claiming to be an expert in World War II. What I am claiming to be an expert in is, oh, hang on. Okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. I'll concede, Silly. I mean, I wouldn't argue with you. You're subject matter expert. I wouldn't argue. What we do understand is there are massive complexities here, guys. Massive complexities. And what I think it is fair to say is, I don't think the people who are alive in Ukraine today, or maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them, or maybe a tiny proportion, were actually involved in this. I do think Ukraine has been attacked unnecessarily. I do think NATO's involvement is an inevitability. But guys, look, from everything I've said today holistically, everything I've said, going through all these different scenarios, I just do not think that NATO minus the United States have a W on this one, guys. I really don't. And right, guys, I'm going to close this off now. I'm going to close this down now. Silly Galadi, I will look into that, how the Ukrainians, I will look at that. I will look at that tomorrow. Silly Galadi is saying Israel today completely supports Ukraine. I'm talking about World War II. And James Brooke is saying, Silly, you are correct. In response, you guys put those comments almost identical. So James Brooke is saying, Silly, you are correct. And he's confirming what you're saying by the Ukrainians, how they treat the Jews in the Second World War. Right, ladies and gentlemen, before this gets heated, I've got Lord of the Rings on. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back on tomorrow morning at, what time will I be on? I'll be back on tomorrow morning at 8. I'm going to see what Gimli's going to do, guys. I'm going to see, can the Fellowship of the Ring manage to make it to Mordor and cast the ring into the fires of Mount Doom? Or will Sauron manage to overthrow elves, men and dwarves and set Middle Earth into darkness? I don't know what the answer to that is, guys, but I am going to find out. I'm going to find out for you guys. I'll let you guys know whether the ring is cast into the fires from whence it came. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the morning. I'll see you later.